Welcome to the History of AI podcast. Ready for a deep dive into the history of artificial intelligence? We're going all the way from the very beginning to the crazy stuff they're doing with AI today.
You mean like generative AI?
Yeah, exactly. It's wild.
Right, it really is. And it all started when computers were, well, pretty basic, like glorified calculators, really.
Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, they could crunch numbers, but that was about it.
And yet somehow people started thinking about AI even back then.
It's pretty mind-blowing. Alan Turing, real visionary, that guy wrote this paper in the 50s. Computing machinery and intelligence. He was already asking, can machines actually think?
Whoa, so is that where the idea for the Turing test came from?
That's it. Could a computer fool you into thinking it was human? That's the question, right?
I mean, if it could, does that mean it's really thinking?
Still gets people debating. And just a few years later, 1956, boom, the Dartmouth Conference.
The official birth of AI.
You got it. John McCarthy, the guy who came up with the term artificial intelligence, he was there. Super smart guy. Really believed that machines could learn.
Even back then, when computers were still basically just for, like, math.
Yep. It was a pretty bold idea at the time. So you have this moment, the idea of AI is born.
Okay, so what happens next? What were these early AI programs like?
Well, think about Eliza.
Eliza?
The world's first chatbot, created in '66.
No way, in the 60s.
It used this pretty basic system, like matching patterns in language. But get this, some people actually thought they were talking to a therapist.
Wow, that's kind of freaky, but also, like, really cool. Shows you how even simple programs can really tap into our human need to connect, right?
Exactly. And then you had Shaky the robot in the late 60s. This thing was clunk. Imagine a TV camera for eyes trying to move around a room. Not exactly the sleek robots we imagine today.
But still a huge step.
Oh, absolutely. Shaky was a pioneer. It started us down the road of teaching machines to see, to navigate, to interact with objects. I mean, this was huge back then.
It's crazy to think about how those early kind of clunky steps led to the robots we have today.
Yeah, but things didn't exactly go smoothly after that.
You mean the AI winter?
Yep. The late 70s, progress slowed down, funding dried up. Part of it was just that those early systems couldn't quite live up to the hype.
The hype cycle strikes again. Happens with all kinds of new tech. Do you ever wonder if things would have been different without that AI winter?
Tough to say. But even during that time, people were still working, making progress. For example, in the 80s, you started to see the very first self-driving cars.
Driverless cars in the 80s. Get out of here.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
So even when things seemed kind of bleak, those breakthroughs were still happening.
Makes you wonder what else was going on back then.
Well, there's Deep Blue.
Oh, yeah. The chess-playing computer.
Took on Garry Kasparov, the world champion, in '96.
I remember that. It lost the first time, right? But then?
Won the rematch a year later.
It's such a big deal. It really captured the public's imagination, showed the world just how powerful AI could be. 200 million chess moves a second, if I remember correctly.
That's right. Deep Blue showed the power of raw computation, but also hinted at the possibility of even more sophisticated systems, ones that could learn and adapt like us.
So even during that AI winter, the seeds of today's revolution were being planted.
You could say that. It shows that progress isn't always a straight line. You have breakthroughs, setbacks, and then those unexpected twists and turns.
But the dream of building intelligent machines, that kept going.
Definitely. And those early years, they laid the groundwork for everything we're going to talk about next. So now we're entering the 21st century. Things are really starting to heat up for AI. In the early 2000s, you saw this really interesting shift towards AI that could connect with us, on a more emotional level.
Yeah, like Kismet, right? That robot.
Exactly. It developed it at MIT.
It could recognize and even, like, mimic human emotions. That's crazy. I mean, people were already thinking about robots that could actually understand our feelings.
It really was groundbreaking. And at the same time that social robots were emerging, AI was also reaching for the stars. Literally.
What do you mean?
2004, NASA sends 2 rovers, Spirit and Opportunity, to Mars.
Okay, yeah, I remember that. But how is that AI?
These weren't just remote-controlled robots, right? They had AI on board that let them make decisions in real time. They were navigating the Martian terrain on their own.
Wow. I never thought about it like that. AI was exploring another planet.
It's amazing, right? And it shows you that AI isn't just about creating machines that think like us. It's about expanding what's possible, pushing those boundaries.
Absolutely. And speaking of pushing boundaries, didn't IBM's Watson make a pretty big splash around that time too?
Oh yeah, Watson, 2011. Remember when it won Jeopardy?
Who could forget that? I mean, it went up against human champions and just blew everyone away.
It was a real turning point. It showed what AI could do with natural language processing and information retrieval.
Yeah, it felt like AI had crossed this threshold.
What?
It was incredible, but also kind of, unnerving.
I get it. People started asking a lot of questions about the future of AI, like how it was going to change different fields. And then not long after that, AI really started entering our daily lives.
Like with Siri and Alexa.
Exactly.
I remember when Siri first came out, it was mind-blowing. I could actually talk to my phone and it would understand me.
Right. AI was becoming more accessible, more user-friendly. And now, look, those assistants are everywhere. It's like we can't imagine life without them.
It's crazy how quickly things have changed. But I think the real game changer was Geoffrey Hinton and his work on neural networks and deep learning. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So neural networks, they've been around for a while. They're basically modeled after the human brain. But Hinton's work on deep learning algorithms, that's what really revolutionized things. These algorithms let neural networks analyze huge amounts of data, find patterns, and learn in ways that were never possible before.
So deep learning was kind of like unlocking AI's true potential.
You could say that. Suddenly, AI could do things that people thought were only possible for humans, like recognizing images, processing speech, understanding natural language, all much better than before. It really paved the way for the even more sophisticated AI we have today, including, of course, generative AI.
And that brings us to the 2020s, the era of generative AI. I feel like every day there's some new headline about AI creating amazing art, writing stories, composing music. It's incredible.
It really is. Models like GPT-3 from OpenAI, DALL-E, they're trained on these massive data sets. So they learn the patterns in the data and then use that to create completely new content. And the results are often indistinguishable from human work.
I know. GPT-3, when that came out in 2020, I was blown away. It can write poems, articles, even code.
And DALL-E, generating images from text descriptions. That's like having an AI artist working for you.
Seriously. And then ChatGPT comes along in 2022, and suddenly we have these incredibly natural-sounding conversations with AI.
ChatGPT, that was a game changer. It could answer questions, generate different creative text formats, all kinds of things.
It felt like the future was arriving, Right. AI wasn't just processing information, it was actually interacting with us in this really engaging way.
I know what you mean. And it's just been accelerating ever since. New models, new capabilities. It seems like there's something new every day.
It's really an exciting time to be following AI.
Absolutely. But before we jump into the future and what it might hold, I think it's worth going back to something you mentioned earlier, those AI assistants like Siri and Alexa.
Yeah.
Think about how much they've become a part of our lives, helping us find information, controlling our smart homes, all sorts of things.
They're incredibly useful. It makes you wonder what role they'll play in the future, right? Will they become even more personalized, maybe even anticipate our needs before we even ask?
That's definitely a possibility. And as AI keeps advancing, I think we can expect it to become even more integrated into our lives. It's almost like the lines between the physical and digital worlds are starting to blur.
That's both exciting and a little bit scary to think about. But I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on what the future holds for AI. So where do we go from here? What's next for generative AI? Where do you see it having the biggest impact?
Oh man, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, the potential is just huge. Healthcare, for one.
Healthcare.
Think about it. AI analyzing medical images, maybe even helping doctors make diagnoses faster and more accurately.
That would be incredible.
Right. And then you have personalized medicine. AI could help create treatment plans that are specifically tailored to a person's genes and lifestyle.
Wow. AI really could play a huge role in keeping us healthy. What about other areas?
Well, the creative industries are already being transformed. AI tools that can help writers come up with story ideas, composers write music, even create realistic 3D models for games and movies.
That's wild. So it's like having an AI partner to boost your creativity.
Exactly. It's going to be interesting to see how artists and writers adapt to these new tools.
Yeah, I mean, will they embrace them? Will they resist them?
I think it'll be a mix of both, honestly. But I do think we'll see a lot of collaboration between humans and AI, artists and writers using these tools to push their creative boundaries.
It's definitely exciting to think about. But, with all this amazing potential, there are also some challenges that come with AI, right?
Right.
especially as it becomes more powerful and more integrated into our lives.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the big ones with generative AI is making sure it's used ethically and responsibly.
What do you mean?
Well, we have to be careful about bias in the data these models are trained on, and we need to put safeguards in place to prevent them from being misused.
So it's not just about developing the technology, it's also about making sure it's used for good.
Exactly. We need to make sure AI benefits everyone, not just a select few. And that's going to take a lot of collaboration, researchers, policymakers, everyone, really to figure out how to steer AI in the right direction.
Well, this has been an incredible journey, I have to say. We've covered so much ground, from those early ideas about thinking machines to the mind-blowing stuff that's happening right now. Any final thoughts for our listeners as we wrap things up?
Just that AI is a constantly evolving field, and it's a super exciting time to be paying attention. Stay curious, keep asking those tough questions about the implications of AI, and most importantly, don't be afraid to embrace the possibilities.
It's a future full of promise and challenges, that's for sure. And as you said, it's up to all of us to shape it responsibly. Thank you for listening to the History of AI podcast.